So, in the beginning I wanted to thank all the devotees for giving me the opportunity to speak on the subject of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we'll begin in a traditional way by chanting the prayers, seeking the blessings of the spiritual masters, Vaishnavas, and the Supreme Lord. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyanandana Shalakaya Chaksharan Militam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanepyo Vaishnavepyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Budaya Mahatprema Puro Vibhur Nirmaya Ksheti Yadamusha Purushavam Tegana Sadasa Sadasmaka Ilang Krishishta Bhagavan Vachamsi Me Om Nama Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we continue reading Canto 10, Chapter 6 of Srimad Bhagavatam, the killing of the demon Putana. And today we'll read texts 4 through 8, which is on the board. And I do need special blessings from all of you to try to share at least the most essential information on these verses, because it's a very important chapter in many ways, and actually by preparing for the class I was thinking more of the things I should skip saying rather than of the things I could say, because there is so much in there. So I'll read the previous texts on my own, and then we'll chant text number 8 responsively. Text number 4. Sakhechare ekat datpatya pudhanananda gokula yashitva mayehatmanam pravishat kamacharini. Once upon a time, Putana Rakshasi, who could move according to her desire and was wandering in outer space, converted herself by mystic power into a very beautiful woman and thus entered Gokula, the abode of Nanda Maharaj. Purport. Rakshasis learn mystic powers by which they can travel in outer space without machines. So that was Putana airline coming to Vrindavan. In some parts of India, there are still such mystical witches who can sit on a stick and use it to fly from one place to another in a very short time. This art was known to Putana. Assuming the feature of a very beautiful woman, she entered Nanda Maharaja's abode, Gokula. Interestingly enough, in Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada says that this art is predominantly popular, witchcraft in northwest India, so I suppose it's a blessing that we are in eastern part of India and not so exposed to that here. So texts number 5 and 6. Tam keshabanda vyatisakta malikam brihan nilamba stanakricha madhyamam svasasam kalpita karna bhushana vishalasat kuntala manditananam Valgo smita pagna visarga vikshitar manoharantim vanitam bradokasam amam satam boja karena rupinim gopya shriyan drishtum ivagatam patim. Her hips were full, her breasts were large and firm, seeming to overburden her slim waist, and she was dressed very nicely. Her hair, adorned with a garland of malika flowers, was scattered about her beautiful face. Her earrings were brilliant, and as she smiled very attractively, glancing upon everyone, her beauty drew the attention of all the inhabitants of Braja, especially the men. When the gopis saw her, they thought that the beautiful goddess of fortune, holding a lotus flower in her hand, had come to see her husband, Krishna. Text 7. Balagrahas tatra vichinvati shishun yatrichaya nandagrihe sudantakam balam pratichana Nijoru tejasam dadarshatalpegnim ivahitam bhasi. While searching for small children, Putana, whose business was to kill them, entered the house of Nanda Maharaj unobstructed, having been sent by the superior potency of the Lord. Without asking anyone's permission, she entered Nanda Maharaj's room, where she saw the child sleeping in bed. His unlimited power covered like a powerful fire covered by ashes. She could understand that this child was not ordinary, but was meant to kill all demons. Purport demons are always busy creating disturbances and killing, but the child lying on the bed in the house of Nanda Maharaj was meant to kill many demons. And so, text number 8, please chant responsively. Vibhutyatam balaka marika graham Vibhutyatam balaka marika graham Chara charatma sa nimilitekshana Chara charatma sa nimilitekshana Anantam aropayat ankam antakam Anantam aropayat antamantakam Yathoragam suptam abhutirajudi Yathoragam suptam abhutirajudi Vibhutyatam balakamarika graham Chara charatmasa nimilitekshana Anantam aropayat ankamantakam Yathoragam suptam abhutirajudi. Hare Krishna. Anyone? Chara chara Nantamarapayan Ladies, please. Vibhudyatam balakamarekagraham Tvaragam Suttamabuddhi Rajadhi Vibhudyatam balakamarekagraham Vibhutya, understanding, tam, her, Putana, balaka marika graham, a witch very expert in killing small babies, chara achara atma, Krishna, the all-pervading supersoul, saha, he, nimilita ikshanaha, closed his eyes, anantam, the unlimited, aropayat, she placed, ankam, on her lap, antakam, for her own annihilation, yadha, as, uragam, a snake, suptam, while sleeping, abudhi, a person who has no intelligence, rajudhi, one who thinks a snake to be a rope, Lord Sri Krishna, the all-pervading supersoul lying on the bed, understood that Putana, a witch who was expert in killing small children, had come to kill him. Therefore, as if afraid of her, Krishna closed his eyes. Thus Putana took upon her lap him who was to be her own annihilation, just as an unintelligent person places a sleeping snake on his lap, thinking the snake to be a rope. Purport. In this verse, there are two perplexities. When Krishna saw that Putana had come to kill him, he thought that since this woman was present with motherly affection, although artificial, he had to offer her a benediction. Therefore, he looked at her with a little perplexity and then closed his eyes again. Putana Rakshasi also was perplexed. She was not intelligent enough to understand that she was taking a sleeping snake on her lap. She thought the snake to be an ordinary rope. The two words antakam and anantam are contradictory. Because of not being intelligent, Putana thought that she could kill her antakam, the source of her annihilation, but because he is ananta, unlimited, no one can kill him. So we'll read the translations one more time. But before we do that, I think it's worth mentioning a very important point, practical point, because what we read in Srimad Bhagavatam is not just, mythological stories from ancient India, but very practical narrations which can help us to advance in Krishna consciousness, and therefore, naturally, even though these events did take place more than 5,000 years ago, when Krishna was present, and therefore they have been described in many, many texts of Vedic literature, not only in Srimad Bhagavatam, but in other Puranas, such as Brahma Vaivarta Purana and Garga Samhita and many other sources. And it's quite interesting that this was taking place at the time where there were no internet and no even printing presses, and people living thousands and thousands of miles away from each other would describe the same exact stories. And so, and worship exactly the same Lord. And so, even though these are literal events, but nevertheless, in Vaishnava theology, there is a part which suggests that there is another esoteric meaning of those pastimes related to our own spiritual lives, and it's very important to understand how we are connected to Krishna's pastimes. Are we taking part in Krishna's pastimes right now? Of course, we would like to take part in Krishna's pastimes sometime in the future, but what about now? And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, by whose mercy we're all sitting here, because not only he discovered Sridham Mayapur and explained to all of us its significance, but also he started Western outreach. He was the first Acharya who started Western outreach. And he wrote many books, and in one of his books, Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita, he describes, actually not only there, but also in Sri Krishna Samhita, he describes that the demons whom Krishna killed in his pastimes are representing anarthas or obstacles on the path of our devotional service. And Putana was the very first demon Krishna killed. Somehow ladies first, right? Looks like the Supreme Lord is the topmost gentleman, so he wanted to give his first mercy to the lady, even though she was not very well behaved lady though, pretty degraded. Nevertheless, Krishna overlooked her shortcomings, as we know, and he gave her a lot of mercy. And that point has been noted very early in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 3rd chapter, there is a famous verse quoted by Sri Uddhava, the direct associate and actually Prime Minister of Krishna in Dwaraka. And so after Krishna left this world, Uddhava was lamenting in separation, and this is one of the famous statements Uddhava made, which means that, alas, will I ever find another master like him who is so merciful that he gave position of his own nurse to the witch who came to try and kill him with the poison smeared on her breast, giving him breast to suck her milk. And shifting back into Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, there was one great devotee, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, who didn't really appear as a great devotee because externally he behaved as sense gratifier. Chaitanya Bhagavat describes that he was sitting on a big couch, very soft, surrounded by soft pillows, and he had nice fruits next to him, and he had a nice kind of mustache which he was used to twirl. Some men, they have this twirled up mustache, so he had those, and he was chewing pan, betel nut. Some people do that, they chew and they have, their whole mouth is red. And he had a spittoon next to the couch, and he was spitting that pan into that spittoon. And he used to look at himself in the mirror and really enjoy. So he didn't really appear as a great devotee at all. And nevertheless, when Gadadhar Pandit, and I believe Mukunda was accompanying him, and Gadadhar Pandit had very strong doubt about Pundarik Vidyanidhi's devotion, because it's kind of natural that it says never judge the book by the cover, but this is a natural tendency. We expect devotee to look like devotee and behave like devotee. And when we see someone behaving in the way very similar to, extreme sense gratifiers, it's very hard to imagine that this person can be a great devotee. So Gadadhar had those doubts in his mind, and Mukunda could figure it out, that he is really doubtful. And then he decided to chant this verse, just to help Mukunda understand what's Pundarik Vidyanidhi's real status is. And then he chanted, Aho bakiyam stanakala kutham jighamsaya paya apyasadvi lebhegati mudrichitam tatonyam kambadailum sharanam brajamam. And as soon as Pundarik Vidyanidhi heard that verse, he went into fit of ecstasy, and he started crying and shivering and rolling on the floor and saying, where will I find my master? Where will I find such a merciful master as Krishna? So he kept quoting that verse, Kambadailum Sharanam Brajama. And Gadadhar was shocked by this display of devotion. And then actually he narrated that incident to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, asking, looks like I've committed an offense to such an exalted devotee. Even though this offense was in the mind, I doubted his exalted position, so what do I do to mitigate the consequences? Because if you commit an offense towards the devotee, the reactions can be, the severity of reactions will be in accordance to that devotee's level of advancement. And so if we commit an offense towards great devotee, even in the mind, the reactions can still be very severe. And Lord Chaitanya said, well, best thing if you accept him as your guru, which Gadadhar Pandit did, so he accepted Pundarik Vidyanidhi as his guru. And so, actually, Srila Jiva Goswami points out to this verse in his Sandarbhas, and he says that there are many reasons why we should surrender unto Krishna. And of course, the first and foremost reason, the basic reason, is that he is the boss. And everything will be happening as he wants, regardless of our surrender or non-surrender. So, if we surrender unto Krishna, it will just make our life much easier. So that's the basic reason. But the topmost reason, Jiva Goswami mentions, referring to this very verse, is that Krishna is extremely merciful. And how merciful he is, that he gave the position of his own nurse to the ugly witch who came to try and kill him. And of course, when we hear these things, when we hear these pastimes, I think it's really important for us to ask questions or express our doubts. And the first doubt, which should be natural, is how come that personalities like Putana have access into Krishna's pastimes? I mean, even here in Mayapur, we have, chowkidars, guards, who do not, at least not supposed to, allow any wrong kind of people into the campus, right? And we can understand that Krishna's pastimes are guarded much better than we can ever imagine. And so, how come that Putana could enter in there? I mean, it's been explained in here that it was an arrangement of the internal energy of the Lord, Yogamaya, so somehow Yogamaya allowed Putana to enter into Krishna's pastimes. But still it is very surprising, because to enter into Krishna's pastimes, one has to have very high qualification. I mean, we are trying to gain a little bit of the qualification by sadhana, service, and many other activities in devotional service. We try to develop that qualification. So, did Putana chant 16 rounds a day? Was she following 4 regular principles? What happened? How did she end it in Krishna's pastimes? And the explanation is given in Garga Samhita and Brahma Vaivarta Purana. There are little bit different descriptions, very similar, but with some details differing. And in one source, it's explained that she has been a sister, and in the other source, daughter of Bali Maharaj. So somehow or other, she was connected to Bali Maharaj through family ties. Of course, the side question can be, like, how come that the two authoritative sources give different explanation, but then the standard answer is that these pastimes, they do not happen just once. These are recurring pastimes. And so, in one version, she was the daughter of Bali Maharaj. In the other version, she was a sister of Bali Maharaj. So, if we come across contradictions in Vedic statements, our understanding that both are right, and contradiction is only in our mind. And so, then, as we know, when Vamanadev came into the sacrificial arena of Bali Maharaj, as it is described in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he was extremely attractive. And everyone was so charmed by Vamanadev, including that lady, and her name was Ratna Mala. She was so charmed by Vamanadev that she thought, apparently she was not married then, and she thought, when I will get married, I would like to have this kind of child. And so she actually was thinking about Vamanadev with great love and affection and devotion like a mother. So then, after the pastime unfolded further, and after Bali Maharaj was deprived of his kingdom and even freedom by Vamanadev, her mood changed. And she was thinking, even if that child would be my own son, I would kill him. So from her past life, she had these two very strong desires. First, to relate to the Supreme Lord as a child, and second, try to kill him. So, and then Krishna fulfills both desires, and he gives her birth as Putana, and here she goes. And of course, this is very popular pastime amongst the devotees. They like to depict that in dramas. In one drama, Putana is singing her famous song, Putana, Putana is my name, killing little children is my game. And so then she entered into Krishna's pastimes, and as we were referring to the statements by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Putana is also connected to the very first anartha we have to face in our devotional service, and so we can understand that this is the root anartha. And so Putana represents two things. One is externally a deceiving spiritual person, spiritual guide or guru, false guru, fake guru. And we can understand from the description, right, that she came, she was really nasty, ugly witch, but she disguised herself into a very nice spiritual personality to such an extent that everyone was thinking, wow, this is Lakshmi Devi, right? And that's external anartha, so we can be confused by false prophets, as Bible I think says, right? Or false spiritual guides. And unfortunately, this false spiritual guidance may not be necessarily limited to the groups outside of ISKCON. It may also happen that some devotees might get confused and promote false ideas about Krishna consciousness. So that's why Srila Prabhupada was saying to that effect, surrender does not mean you have to surrender your intelligence. So which means that whatever you hear or read from any source, always have a filter, right? Always filter it out and always think for yourself. And I mean, this is the statement of Lord Buddha, but I think it is equally applicable in our case, because we're also supposed to be Buddha. As Bhagavad Gita says, we're also supposed to be intelligent. After all, Krishna consciousness is Buddhi Yoga. And so Lord Buddha said that if you hear any statement which creates doubt in your mind, even if this statement comes from me directly, you should not accept it blindly. And of course, Srila Prabhupada was also highlighting the point that blind faith is not acceptable in Krishna consciousness. And so, but this is external manifestation of this anartha, and the most important internal manifestation of this anartha, which Putana represents, is materialistic mind. And this is a little or maybe big problem we'll have to deal with to greater or lesser extent, right? And so the best thing for the mind is to connect it to Krishna. Sabai mana Krishna padaravindayo bacham sibai kuntha gunana varnane, as it's been described in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in relation to the example of Ambarish Maharaj, that primarily he was doing a lot of external services to the Lord, but his primary service was in his mind. So he was fully absorbed in thinking about the Lord. And so that's why the very first thing Krishna says in the famous repeated statement of Bhagavad Gita is man mana, think of me. And so this is the best way. Materialistic mind, represented by Putana, can be subdued and purified, as Putana has been purified, when the mind is in touch with Krishna. And that's why our external activities, they give us very little spiritual benefit if our mind is not focused on Krishna. And the simple example is mantra, right? Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So if we just chant mantra with our lips, we're just doing lip service to the Lord, that gives us very little benefit, unless and until our mind is absorbed in chanting. That's why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, amongst many things, he recommended that you chant audibly the holy name, your japa, but make sure that you chant the same holy name in your mind, right? So yeah, because this is the most important. Not what happens externally, what kind of show we perform externally. Of course, we were reflecting on the statement, fake it until you make it, that it's also to some degree relevant in devotees' case, but yeah, we should try not just to fake it, but to actually work on becoming devotees. And so it is very interesting, because actually Srila Prabhupada describes Krishna consciousness, and this is not to discourage you, but just to help all of us, including myself in the first place, to understand what Krishna consciousness really is, that he described Krishna consciousness as razor's edge. And so what it means really, that if we try to avoid offenses in the chanting of the holy name, aparada shunya hoy loho Krishna nam, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, then we will advance spiritually without any doubt. But if we relax and allow offenses to happen, then the reaction might be pretty heavy for that. And what is the reaction? That first stage of the reaction, that devotee can become mental. Second stage, devotee can become judgmental. And the word judgmental is very interesting, because it consists of two words, right? Judge and mental. So basically, judgmental means I imagine myself to be a judge, right? And I'm trying to pose as a judge without having the position of a judge, which is very interesting, right? And so we can understand, if we pursue that judgmental path, what it leads to? Mental disease. And so this is the biggest danger. If we are serious in Krishna consciousness, then we will advance spiritually, and if we allow offenses to happen to us, if we just, ignore offenses, then devotee can go crazy to greater or lesser degree. And anyone who's been around devotee association has seen that happen. How many of you have seen that happen? Okay. So this is a big danger. Instead of getting cured, we can, instead of becoming purified, we can become putrefied by the same process. And that's why it's really important to understand what is the way to deal with the mind. And it's interesting that Putana is the killer of little children. And what is the primary difference between a child and adult? It's very simple. That child is not taking any responsibility, right? The smaller the child is, the less responsibility he has. So child is just, doing anything and everything, and parents supposed to look after the child, not the child supposed to look after himself. But when the child grows, he behaves more and more responsibly. And so responsible behavior is the main difference between a child and adult. And Putana is the killer of little children. Does it say anything to us? If we are not behaving in a responsible way, that means we become victims of Putana. And so that's why responsibility, this single word, is the solution to many, many problems we face in Krishna consciousness. And of course, responsibility can be external, but there is also internal responsibility. Probably many of you have heard about formal authority and moral authority, right? So formal authority is external responsibility, but moral authority means that someone takes internal responsibility. And in the same way as we spoke about external devotional service, external chanting, and internal devotional service, internal chanting. So being moral authority is much greater or much more important sign of someone who has taken a real responsibility in Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop here, and we have a few more minutes if anyone wants to share any questions, comments, suggestions, complaints, corrections. Yes, Tattvavid Prabhu, please pass on the microphone. To the back. To the back. Yes, please raise your hand. Microphone is there, yeah. I think it's off.
Here we go. Hare Krishna. Is the mic on?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for the class. I gave a similar class to the Russians a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Touched on many of the points, but you expanded. One detail I just want to add to the description of Pundarik Vidyanidhi when he heard that verse. He lamented, he said, I'm living my life uselessly because I haven't obtained the mercy of Krishna, but Putana obtained that mercy. And he began to trash his living quarters. What use is this rich, opulent surrounding I'm living in? And he showed great disdain and detachment from his material opulence. And that was also a point that convinced Gadadhar Pandit that that this devotee was not materialistic.
Thank you. Maybe our sound technicians could make that radio microphone a little bit louder. Thank you. Nrisingatirtha Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have a question in relation to the holy name. You spoke about mantra and the power of the holy name to purify. In some places, acharyas explain that there are specific names of the Lord that carry specific potency, secondary and primary holy names. But in some places also, Prabhupada says to people from other faiths that you just chant names of God, whatever names of God you have, and you'll also get purified. So I was wondering if you could maybe comment on how to reconcile the two, because in some places, specific names are given as authorized, and in other places, Prabhupada says, whatever name you have, you chant and you get purified. Which one is it?
Yeah.
Is it the conception of God that you ascribe to whatever name you have, or is it a specific name that's authorized in Scripture that carries the potency?
Yeah, thank you. So what is the difference between chanting different names of God? Because there are different potencies, but they are all Nam Nama Karibauda Nijasvara Shaktis, that every name of God has full Shakti, full potency. So if they are the same, how are they different? And the explanation is given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Harinama Chintamani. He explains that different names of God have different effect. I mean, they're all of these names are all powerful, but certain names, and most of the names are official names of God, like Ishvara or God, Allah, Adonai, Yahweh, whatever, there's so many official names of God. And so by chanting official names of God, one can enter into official relationship with the Supreme Lord, which are of awe and reverence. But if someone chants personal names of God, such as Krishna, Govinda, Gopal, Shyam Sundar, then one can enter into personal relationship with the Supreme Lord. And that's the only difference. And so, of course, we know that personal relationship are the highest. But even if people are officially connected to God, it's already good enough. And if they are serious, it can give them liberation and can transfer them to the kingdom of God. That's why Prabhupada was saying it doesn't really matter which religion people practice as long as they practice it, right? Because the problem is that people just claim to belong to something, but they don't really practice. But if they practice any tradition, they will advance spiritually. And interestingly enough, in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada makes very important statement. He says that the purpose of Krishna consciousness movement is to propagate God consciousness in the world. And just for those who have missed it, in the next sentence he repeats pretty much the same thing. He says, therefore, we need many intelligent young men and women to sacrifice. Therefore, Krishna consciousness movement needs many intelligent young men and women to sacrifice their life for propagating God consciousness in the world. So he makes this clear-cut distinction between Krishna consciousness and God consciousness, because not many people will be actually able to become Krishna conscious. It's rare, Manushyanam Sahasrishu. But we can help people to become God conscious. by encouraging them to practice any tradition properly. And then finally they will advance by practicing their tradition. So this was Prabhupada's belief, or conviction rather. Thank you. Mataji? Okay, and then we'll give microphone to you. And before that, I wanted to say one more thing. I actually wanted to say, and which I think is important, because devotional service is simple, but it's not easy. How many of you have experienced that? Okay. So there is one important formula which can help us to solve any types of problems we might be facing in devotional service. So, and the formula is, any problems in devotional service can be solved by serving devotees. Any problems in devotional service can be solved by serving devotees. How many of you had experience of that? Okay. And sometimes one might have, due to the influence of past karma, one might have serious problems with the mind. Anybody wants to know how to address serious problems with the mind? Okay. Again, the same formula, but it's a little bit specified. If you want to solve serious problems while performing devotional service, you can serve the closest devotees of Krishna. And we're not talking about gopis, we're talking about cows. Because cows are very dear to Krishna, and so we're very fortunate. We have very nice Goshala in here, and you can just experiment. Whatever problems you have, you just go to the cows, you just feed them, you just brush them, you just stay in touch with them, and you will see the result. You wouldn't even have to be convinced theoretically. You will see the result for yourself. Because every single problem we might have, and like many times problems are associated with different planets and demigods, and the cow is embodiment of every single demigod you can think of. All 33 million of them are living in the body of a cow, and so just by doing something for the cow, you please not only the Supreme Lord, but every single demigod as well. So it's very powerful. Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Mara. Hare Krishna. Is it working?
Yeah.
First of all, you always tell a wonderful preaching story in your classes, and so we missed that.
Sorry about that.
Second, just one comment, one question. The comment is, you were mentioning how sometimes she's a sister and putana, and sometimes she's a mother, and in the same book...
Daughter.
Or daughter, sorry.
Yeah.
Same book, Chaitanya Siksamrita, it's mentioned that, of course, different yugas, Lord takes different forms. Even if he's Lord Ram, sometimes he's different color. It's not always green. So there also mentioned that, of course, because of different yugas. Anyway, I just thought, share that. Just a few days ago, we had a wonderful class by Kishore Prabhu at Community Center, and we were discussing about this same of the demons as mentioned by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and he went one step further, which I was also pondering for years, is the forms of the demons actually tell the sin which they represent. Just like we gave the example of he gave the example of Trinavarta was it false gurus?
Trinavarta is pride
Logic.
of knowledge.
Yeah.
having theoretical knowledge.
And then the arguments disperses, so it's almost like that. And then with the Putna is false gurus and how the guru is supposed to give the nectar of real, of Krishna consciousness. Instead, she gives the poison.
Mm-hmm.
So my question now is, have you thought in this line, or as devotees here, maybe we can ponder further and check out different demons, how through their form, it will be easy to remember the sins they represent.
Yeah, of course, it's very useful. Thank you. All right, Prabhu, last question and then we'll finish with that. Someone can please pass the microphone forward. It's working. Yeah.
Maharaj, Hare Krishna. At the outset, Maharaj, we are very grateful to hear Putana's past life. So far, I did not know about the past life of Putana. So, in this today's class, you referred about Pundarika Vidyanidhi, who was the great devotee, but is a lavish behavior outwardly. But at one context, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mentioned, is referring this Nityananda Prabhu. The same words I am repeating, Maharaj. Even if Lord Nityananda were to marry a Mohammedan girl, or a bottle, or enter a bar, his lotus feet would remain most worshipable. This is exactly what I read it from the book of Prabhupada. So that is the conception with regard to the Nityananda Prabhu. Similarly, Srivasa Pandit also, after knowing about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's conception about Advaitacharya Prabhu, if Advaitacharya Prabhu is, though is a Vishnu Tattva and Jiva, even if you say Advaitacharya Prabhu is also with a lower class woman, if he associating with a lower class man, or drinking alcohol, still serve and respect. These are the two quotations which I read it from the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's versions. One is for Nityananda Prabhu, one is for Advaita Prabhu. Similarly, Pundarika Vidyanidhi also, just now you mentioned about that. So how we can understand? So if they are so devotees, they are highly elevated devotees, if their behavior is such, how the common people can understand?
Yeah. Well, that's why we are not supposed to be judgmental and jump to the conclusions when we see some kind of wrong behavior, but rather ask someone who is able to help us understand the position of an exalted devotee. All right, thank you all very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande.